Hey, this is Matt Daniels, and I just want to take a couple minutes to walk through what we do on our Edge phone calls. These phone calls have been put together with 5 or 6 rounds of questions or reflection exercises that allow anywhere from 3 to 5 guys in the course of 45 minutes to an hour to really take a deep dive, get a chance to see one another, be seen by one another, and do it in such a way that it's both life-giving and also efficient. A friend of mine likes to talk about that moment in conversation when things finally get to a place where you almost click over into what he calls spiritual mode activated, when you know that there's a bit more importance, that the heart starts to show up. And while we would say that we can't control when that happens, we can figure out ways to show up prepared for the conversations we engage in so that we can do everything within our power to create the safety and honesty where we really do feel we can share. And that's what we do in these calls. It doesn't matter if it's a phone call or if you actually did it in person, where you can actually see each other face to face. The important thing is there's just a few simple rules going into it that actually help the whole thing function. So the first thing we do when we do these Edge Venture phone calls is we take into account that we go in rounds. So you can pass on a round. You don't have to answer. Generally, everybody does. There's just 2 or 3 of you. But it just makes it really simple. Everyone's going to get a chance to talk. When do I talk? Do I go first? Do I go second? Do I just jump in? Just takes all that noise away from the conversation. And we just know everybody's going to get a turn to do every step in the game. So the first thing we do is check in. The check-in round, I think we do about a minute apiece for this, maybe 2 at times, where it's real simple. You just share an emotion, kind of a presenting emotion that you're feeling at the moment, 1 or 2, and then a little explanation of what's going on. So if I were to check in, I would say, gosh, I'm checking in as really excited about the idea that I'm making a video that could help a lot of people have meaningful conversations with one another. That's it. I'm excited. And what happens when you take time to check in, it's deceptively simple, but there's really a lot going on. When I take 2 seconds to kind of go, what am I really feeling on the inside? I find a way to actually have my feelings instead of my feelings having me, right? It's a difference between saying I feel angry and then just being carried along by anger. The other thing that we do during this check-in round, in addition to kind of picking a feeling word and then maybe unpacking a little bit of what's driving that feeling, is we make a commitment to let everybody have their feeling. So in these phone calls, you're not going to jump in and say, well, you don't need to feel that way because the Lord's there for you. I mean, if somebody is showing up as brokenhearted, we really honor each man's story and say, hey, thank you for sharing. On a rare occasion that it is a really, really strong feeling that somebody is really struggling, what we might do is say, is there anything you need from us as a group? But generally, we just share feeling, and then when you're done sharing, you can kind of just say, hey, I'm in, which is just a simple way to say, whoever's next in the group, you go ahead. Generally, as a facilitator, you're going to know who's in the call. So you might say, hey, John, why don't you check in with us? Hey, Sam, why don't you check in with us? So if we do a check-in round, it helps us all really show up and hear each other and be there with each other. Secondly, what we usually do is a little story. We call these an acting like myself story. Acting like myself is recognizing that there's a place in us which deeply bears the image of God. Some people call it the true heart. Some people call it the true self. I think the Bible refers to it as the heart, the new heart that has been placed in us. And what we realize is the things that we pay attention to in life tend to grow. So if we can pay attention to our true heart when it shows up, what happens when it shows up, and we can actually tell stories to others, then we reinforce our tendency to show up. And so we'll do a round, again, about 2 minutes each, where we think of a story, where you say, tell a story about a time you acted like your true self this week. Or we might say it like, tell a time about when your heart really showed up. Tell a story about a time when you were surprised because the life of Christ in you just lived out. I can't stress enough about how much we as men, when we're in a kind of an accountability paradigm, our basic sense is at any moment, I'm going to try to run off and sin. We believe sin is more or less faulty pain management. And if we weren't in pain, distress, fear, anger, sadness, those tend to be the emotions that drive us into broken behaviors. And when we are in pain, we do not act like our new selves, our true selves, out of the heart that Jesus placed in us. We suggest that instead of trying to act better, to do more, to try harder, we suggest that simply remembering who you really are becomes the key to acting, to behaving like who you really are. So our 2-minute story about a time I acted like myself this week is going to give you a chance to just kind of cast back through the week. And it's not even noticing a moment when you got it right. This is not about getting it right. It's about a time when love really showed up and operated in you and through you. So a lot of times I might notice a moment when I have an unusual sense of compassion with one of my kids, and I might tell a story. So when you tell these stories, there's some important points. One is you want to kind of get just enough details. I mean, you've got 2.5 minutes to tell the story. So just enough details to where people get a sense of what happened. So I might say the other night I went in to kiss my son goodnight, and I noticed he was feeling sad. That's it. Just enough details. And sometimes I would typically just say, you know what, hey, you'll feel better tomorrow. But for whatever reason, I laid down beside him, and we looked at the ceiling together. And I said, you know, I don't have answers for you right now, but I just want you to know I love you and I'm always there. And when I'm telling these stories, I want to pay attention to a couple of things. I'm going to pay attention to what I'm feeling on the inside, emotionally. And I might even pay attention to what's going on in my body when that happens. Now, all of this, when I'm doing this, it's not only just sharing the story with others, but you're actually, on all these steps, you're actually growing new brain cells, and you are training your brain about what it really is like to act like yourself. So there's some hard neuroscience behind all of these questions that we put in here that really help reinforce good brain habits. So I might say, I was, lay down next to my ceiling, next to my son, said, I don't know exactly how to help you in this, but I love you and I'm always here for you. And as I did that, just kind of felt warm in my body, and I felt tender toward him, and I had a little tear form in my eye, and I had a sense that it was going to be okay. It might be that short, and it might be that simple. The converse with these stories that we'll teach is, hey, if I can't remember a time in this last week where I really acted like my true self, my true heart came through, I might say, here's a time I didn't act that way, but had I acted out of my heart, here's how I would have acted. Here's how I would have liked to have responded. That sounds like grammatical gymnastics, but it's really not. Here's how I would have liked to have responded. We call these do-over stories or repair stories. And so I might say, you know what, my son was going to share his heart, and I was just so busy and so distracted that I said, "Oh, buddy, I'll pray for you," and I just walked out of the room. And later, I realized that he really needed a little more time and attention. And if I had to do it over again, I think what it would have been like me to do would have been to take the time to lay down beside him, look him in the eyes, give him a big hug, and ask him if he needed anything from me. Ask him if he wanted to talk. Just by doing that, you lay down the same patterns in your brain as though you had actually done that. So we go around, we do our check-in round, and we do an acting like myself story. Because we believe that when we are not in a lot of pain and we are remembering who we actually are, and that the Spirit of Christ is alive in each one of us. And there is more in our hearts that wants to be a channel of Christ's love than there is that wants to go run off and be rascally and jump into a bunch of sinful behaviors. When we know we're loved, when we know our needs are met, we more naturally tend to act out of the new heart that Christ has placed in us. And when we take time to tell a story about when that happened, then we're actually more likely to act out of our true selves. So our check-in round, our acting like myself story. Then I ask the question, what do I need? Now, again, a big a heaping helping of brain science on this what do I need story is, if you're like me, if you've done any of these phone calls and you've answered this question, it tends to be like this. Yeah, what do I need? You know, I don't know what I need. Most of us are somewhere along the line, we're taught, not consciously taught, but we picked up that it's kind of not okay to have needs. If I have needs, that makes me vulnerable. If I have needs, it can kind of make me uncomfortable. And if I actually say a need out loud and nobody rushes in to fulfill it, then you're exposed and you're weak and you're vulnerable. And so we do it on purpose because we also believe that it is all of our responsibility to know what we need and to seek to get those needs met. That is adult behavior. That's mature adult behavior. So a lot of times we walk around in the world sort of expecting other people to know what we need. I might need somebody to listen to me. I might honestly need a hug. I might need some time by myself. I might physically need someone to come over to my house and help me move a piece of junk out of my garage that I can't do on my own. I might need a Band-Aid for my finger. I mean, our needs could be various. So we really believe that by giving a chance, each man in the group, a chance to step in, name your need, own your need, that we're activating our own hearts on our behalf. So it's really important for us. Now, what we do when a man shares a need is we take a chance to pray. Sometimes the need is, man, I'm really lonely and I need God to fill a void, or I'm up against a challenge and I don't know what to do. And there's specific content to pray for as a result of that need. So in your phone call, when you're actually doing the group, we'll typically have a man, give a man space to say, hey, what do you need? And to get aware of it. And then just ask, would somebody in the group want to pray for him? Or we might say, Sam, would you pray for John? Mike, would you pray for Sam? And again, short prayers, and because time is of the essence in this group and in this video I'm making right now. So, prayer is simple. Is connect with that person's need on a heart level. You can feel what they need, and there's a little more to this than just saying, when I say, what do I need? It's not like, well, what's your prayer request? And it's not just a transaction of share a prayer request and, hey, I'm going to pray for you. But, hey, I have a need. The important thing is that I become aware of my need. And then as you pray for me is that you jump into my need with me. So I'm not alone. I've exposed myself. Here's what I need. But I also know I'm not alone because you guys have heard me. After we do that round, we do a listening round. The scripture says, draw near to listen rather than to speak. It says, and Matt Redman sang this in a chorus, it's come from out of Ecclesiastes 2, is talks about when you draw near to listen rather than to speak, let your words be few. So a lot of times we pray, we say, oh, I want God's guidance. And then we fill the space with words. Think, well, at what point did we make space for God's guidance to arrive? So we set aside 2 to 3 minutes where we just get quiet. And a lot of times your mind will tend to run everywhere. So in order to kind of help keep the mind inside some guardrails, a lot of times we'll just put out a couple of questions when you get to a listening time in your call. And one of those questions might be, God, how do you feel about this? Or how do you feel about us? How do you feel about me? You know, you've done a check-in, you've shared stories, you have gotten in touch with a sense of what needs you're facing right there. I'm also saying, God, how do you feel about all this? And another question that we'll often hold in our hearts in that listening time is, God, is there anything you want me to know about this? Is there anything you want us to know about this? If you can grab a pen and paper, we're not saying you're writing a new book of the Bible, but you're paying attention to impressions that come up during that time, realizing that there's a good chance it's just your own heart. Could be head noise. But there's also a good chance that in the midst of all the different things that you notice in that space of silence, there may be a couple of things that either the deepest place in your heart or the Holy Spirit whisper to you that you want to pay attention to and not lose. And so, we encourage everybody that does this listening time to, sometimes you have nothing but your cell phone, but you can pull out a notes app and jot a few notes down. So this is the impression I had. So you want to pay attention during that listening time. We like to use the acronym SIFT that we got from a neurobiologist who teaches about paying attention. And this SIFT acronym is, you want to pay attention for sensations that you might feel in your body, images that might come up, feelings, thoughts, and another S might be scriptures. So as you're kind of sifting, that listening time is a sifting time, paying attention to the scriptures and sensations, images, feelings, thoughts that might arise as you're doing that. And then after the listening round is a share. We go around in the group one more time, and we do a sharing round. And we share a picture of whatever we sensed. A lot of times it's so simple, of just something like, hey, I've got you. You know, guy's going through a hard time, and you get quiet for a couple minutes, and they'll come out with just an overwhelming sensation of, don't really have words for it, but I just sense God saying, he's got this. Another guy during a listening time once was kind of up against an emotional barrier that he couldn't break through, and in that space of silence, he just sensed the Lord say, your biggest problem here is you're angry with me. And that just broke into just a space of real tenderness and tears, and he kind of couldn't talk in the rest of the call because what opened up for him in that space of listening was very important. And if there's anything else to underline around this, is that is so important, is that when we are facilitating spaces, we tend to think that we have got to bring the magic. God brings the magic. And when we can make spaces of silence where we can listen together in a group, we open up, there's a humility to that. It says, we don't have the answers, and we don't have to have the answers, and it's okay that we don't have the answers. What we do believe is that God has the answers, and that he will speak, and that he will lead. So that listening time it's almost like the rest of the call just puts you in a posture to really listen and hear. So you connect with your own heart, you listen to each other's story, you make space for each other's needs. We do pray for one another, but then we sit and we just say, God, is there anything you want us to know? Like, we're all in this big soup together now. 3 or 4 of us have now shared, and we'd love to hear from you. And a lot of times people will hear stuff that's not even for them, but it's a sense that it's for somebody else. So then we move toward after we share, we do a one-word checkout. So I might say kind of, hey, I checked in at the beginning. Now how am I checking out? What's the sense of what happened to me during these last 45 minutes, last hour? You just go around the group again, one word, each person. And the most bizarre things will happen sometimes too, where two or three guys will have the exact same word where they're checking. I'm just checking out as feeling connected. I'm feeling supported, feeling held, feeling loved, feeling encouraged. And then you bless and you let go and you go about your week. And then over time, you start to really reap the benefits. And our goal is that people get so much comfort with facilitating this kind of space that even when you're with people that aren't in some kind of a telephone protocol or a small group round question, is you should begin to develop a mindfulness and an ability to pay attention, listen to other people talk, ask them some questions, draw people out. And so if you are just participating in one of the calls or if you are facilitating one of the calls, we just we're really happy about it. We say thank you and enjoy. So any questions, anything you ever have, don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to encourage, enjoy, support, whatever you need. So thanks. Good luck.